January 6, 2018, 8:45 p.m. A quiet Saturday night in Danville, Vermont. Gregory Davis answers the door of his home at 884 Hawkins Road. Standing in front of him is a man wearing a U.S. Marshal's jacket, carrying a rifle, and holding handcuffs. The man tells Davis he has a federal arrest warrant for racketeering out of Virginia. Davis's wife, Melissa, watches as her husband is placed in handcuffs and driven away in what looks like a police cruiser. She's 8 months pregnant with their 7th child. Their 6 other kids, aged 1 to 12, have no idea they'll never see their dad again. The next afternoon, a driver passing through the nearby town of Burnett spots something in a snowbank along Peacham Road. It's Gregory Davis, still handcuffed, shot 14 times with a .22 caliber, dead. This wasn't robbery. This wasn't random violence. This was murder for hire, orchestrated by a Turkish biotech millionaire who feared one thing above all else: the truth. Gregory Davis was 49 years old when he died. He was a devoted Christian, a dedicated father, and a businessman who specialized in investment ventures and environmental waste cleanup. He and Melissa had recently moved to Vermont from New Jersey. They homeschooled their children and were active members of the Concord Community Church. People who knew him described Gregory as a man with infectious joy and deep faith. But in 2015, Gregory made a business decision that would ultimately cost him his life. He entered into an international oil commodities trading deal with 2 brothers, Serhat and Serhat Gumruksu. The deal was supposed to be worth millions. Instead, it became a nightmare. The Gumruksu missed payments, they made excuses, and Gregory started to realize something: he was being defrauded. He discovered that Serhat Gumruksu had been using fake identities during their business dealings. On bounced checks totaling over $600,000, Gumruksu had signed his name HRH Serhat Gumruksu, His Royal Highness. He told people he was a Turkish prince, but he wasn't. By late 2017, Gregory Davis had had enough. He told Gumruksu that if he didn't make things right, he was going to the FBI. That threat signed his death warrant. Serhat Gumruksu was living a very different life than Gregory Davis. At 39 years old, he was the co-founder of Anochian Biosciences, a California biotech company. He claimed to have discovered a cure for HIV. He owned over $100 million in company stock. He lived in Los Angeles, partied with celebrities, and presented himself as a groundbreaking medical researcher. There was just one problem: a lot of it was fake. Court documents would later reveal that Gumruksu had falsified academic credentials and misrepresented his scientific achievements. But in late 2017, none of that mattered because Gumruksu was in the middle of negotiating a massive merger that would make him extremely wealthy. The Anochian Biosciences deal was worth approximately $100 million. It was based on Gumruksu's alleged HIV cure, and it was about to close. Then Gregory Davis threatened to go to the FBI. Gumruksu knew exactly what would happen if Davis followed through. A federal investigation into the oil fraud would expose everything: the fake credentials, the bounced checks, the lies. The biotech merger would collapse. His empire would crumble. So in December 2017, Serhat Gumruksu made a decision: Gregory Davis had to die. First, he tried to buy Davis's silence. He offered him $50,000 to drop the matter, but Davis refused. He wanted accountability, not a payoff. So Gumruksu moved to plan B. He was going to have Gregory Davis murdered. Gumruksu wasn't going to kill Davis himself. He needed distance. He needed plausible deniability. So he built what prosecutors would later call a conspiracy chain, a series of intermediaries designed to separate him from the actual crime. The first link in that chain was Berk Eretay. Eretay was Gumruksu's close friend, and like Gumruksu, he was a Turkish national living in the United States. He worked for Gumruksu in the past, and interestingly, both men had previously worked as magicians in Turkey. In 2017, Gumruksu wired approximately $300,000 to Eretay's bank account. His instructions were simple: find someone to kill Gregory Davis. Eretay reached out to his neighbor in Henderson, a man named Aaron Lee Etheridge. Etheridge was 41 years old, a former railroad conductor. He had a history of drug use and needed money. Arete offered him over $100,000 to arrange the hit, and Etheridge accepted. But Etheridge wasn't a killer either, so he reached out to a friend of his, someone he knew from their shared past of drug use, someone who might actually be capable of murder. His name was Jerry Banks. Banks was 34 years old and living in Fort Garland, Colorado. He agreed to do the job for roughly $50,000, half of what Etheridge was getting paid. The chain was complete. Gumruksu founded it, Arete organized it, Etheridge recruited for it, and Banks would execute it. In the fall of 2017, Banks made a surveillance trip to Vermont. He watched the Davis home. He saw Gregory's children running in and out of the house, playing in the yard. He reported back to Etheridge, "I can't just shoot him at his house. There's too many kids. I'll need to abduct him first." So the plan was adjusted. Banks would pose as a U.S. Marshal. He'd tell Davis he had an arrest warrant, he'd handcuff him, drive him away, and then kill him somewhere isolated. By January 2018, everything was in place. On Saturday, January 6, 2018 at 8:30 p.m., a call comes into emergency services from a cell tower in North Danville. The caller reports a shooting at an address on Cross Road, and police rush to respond. There's just one problem: Cross Road doesn't exist in that area. It's a fake call designed to pull police away from Gregory Davis's home. It's interesting. You would think that if they were going through all this effort to plan a murder, that they would have picked a spot that actually existed. But 15 minutes later, at 8:45 p.m., Jerry Banks pulls up to 884 Hawkins Road in Danville. He's wearing a jacket with a U.S. Marshal's service insignia. He has a badge, a rifle, and handcuffs. He's driving a white four-door vehicle with blue and red emergency lights on the dashboard. Gregory Davis answers his door, and Banks tells him he has a federal arrest warrant for racketeering out of Virginia. He needs to come with him. Davis's 12-year-old son watches as his father is handcuffed and placed in the vehicle. Melissa Davis, 8 months pregnant, watches from the doorway as her husband is driven away into the night. She had no idea that she will never see him again alive. Banks drives Davis approximately 15 miles to a remote pull-off along Peacham Road in Barnett, Vermont. It's snowing. The road is deserted. He orders Davis out of the vehicle and then executes him. 14 shots with a .22 caliber, multiple rounds to the head and torso. Gregory Davis dies in the snow, still handcuffed, 15 miles from his home. Banks leaves the body where it falls, partially covered in snow. Then he makes a phone call. He calls Aaron Etheridge and says, "It's done." And Etheridge immediately calls Barrack Arete to confirm Gregory Davis is dead. The next afternoon, Sunday, January 7th, 2018, a driver passing through Barnett notices something unusual in a snowbank along the side of the road, and they call the police. Investigators find Gregory Davis's body. He's still handcuffed. 14 spent shell casings are scattered around the scene. The murder for hire plot has succeeded, but the investigation is just beginning. The FBI and Vermont State Police immediately launched what would become one of the most complex investigations in Vermont history. The first break comes from the fake 911 call. Investigators trace the call to a burner phone, a prepaid cell phone purchased the day before the murder at a Walmart in Clearfield, Pennsylvania. They pull the security footage, and a man matching Jerry Banks' description is seen buying the phone. But that's not all. Cell tower records show that this burner phone, along with another phone registered to Banks, traveled from Colorado to Pennsylvania and then to Vermont. Crucially, both phones pinged off cell towers in Danville and St. Johnsbury at the exact time Gregory Davis was kidnapped. The FBI now had their hitman. Next, they analyzed Banks' call records. Minutes after the murder, Banks called Aaron Etheridge. Immediately after that call ended, Etheridge called Barrack Arete. The pattern was clear. This is a confirmation of death being passed up the chain of command. Then comes a stroke of luck. On January 8th, 2018, the day after the murder, Jerry Banks is driving back to Colorado on Interstate 70. A Kansas Highway Patrol trooper pulls him over for a traffic violation. The trooper notes that Banks seems extremely nervous. During the stop, the trooper sees that Banks' vehicle is filled with law enforcement equipment, a tactical vest, a gun, and police-style gear. It matches the US Marshal's disguise he had used for kidnapping. The trooper writes up the stop and moves on. But years later, that report becomes crucial evidence linking banks to the crime. Now investigators start to follow the money. Bank records reveal that in 2017, Serhat Gumruksu wired between $150,000 and $300,000 to Barak Erate's account. Erate then funneled over $100,000 to Aaron Etheridge, and Etheridge paid approximately $50,000 to Jerry Banks. So the paper trail leads directly from the hitman to the mastermind. Finally, investigators recover emails and text messages between Gumruksu and Gregory Davis. The messages are damning. Davis is threatening to report Gumruksu to the FBI over the fraudulent oil deal, and he's demanding accountability. And then, just weeks after Davis is murdered, the Inochain Biosciences merger closes successfully, and Gumruksu becomes worth tens of millions of dollars. So the motive is crystal clear. But building a case strong enough to convict takes time. For 4 years, the investigation continues in secret. The conspirators think they've gotten away with it, but they're wrong. In April and May of 2022, nearly 4 years after the murder, the FBI executes coordinated arrests across multiple states. Jerry Banks is arrested while working at Yellowstone National Park. Serhat Gumruksu is arrested at his home in Los Angeles and immediately denied bail. Prosecutors argue he's a massive flight risk due to his wealth and Turkish citizenship. Barak Erate is arrested in Las Vegas. Aaron Lee Etheridge surrenders to authorities in Burlington after initially denying any involvement. All 4 men are charged with conspiracy to commit murder for hire. Over the next 2 years, Jerry Banks, Aaron Etheridge, and Barak Erate all plead guilty. They agree to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for reduced sentences. But Serhat Gumruksu maintains his innocence. He claims he had nothing to do with the murder. He insists the money he wired to Erate was for legitimate business purposes. In March 2025, his case goes to trial. The trial lasts 5 weeks. It's held in U.S. District Court in Burlington, Vermont, presided over by Chief Judge Christina Reese. And in a devastating turn for Gumruksu's defense, all 3 of his co-conspirators take the stand against him. Jerry Banks testifies about receiving payments to kill Davis. Aaron Etheridge testifies about recruiting Banks on behalf of Erate. Barak Erate testifies that Gumruksu specifically ordered the hit and provided all the funding. Prosecutors present the financial records, the cell phone data, the emails, the motive. Gumruksu takes the stand in his own defense, and he denies all wrongdoing. The jury doesn't believe him, though. And on April 18, 2025, Serhat Gumruksu is convicted on all charges: murder for hire, conspiracy to commit murder for hire, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He faces a mandatory sentence of life in prison. In September 2025, the 3 co-conspirators are sentenced. Jerry Banks, the hitman who pulled the trigger, receives 16 years and 8 months in federal prison. Aaron Lee Etheridge, the recruiter who found the killer, receives 11 years and 8 months. Barak Erate, the middleman who organized everything, 9 years and 2 months. Then, on November 24th, 2025, Serhat Gumruksu returns to court for his sentencing. Melissa Davis addresses the court at this time. 7 years have passed since her husband's murder. Her youngest daughter, the child she was pregnant with when Gregory died, is now almost 7 years old. She named her Jubilee, meaning beauty, restoration, and freedom. Melissa tells the court about the scar this crime left on her family, and about how her oldest son had to help raise their younger siblings while she fought through depression. About how her 7 children will never have their father back. She tells the court she offered forgiveness to Etheridge for cooperating early, but for Gumruksu, the man who orchestrated it all, she has only condemnation for his brutal and brazen actions. Judge Christina Reese delivers the sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. The court also orders all 4 men to pay $1.36 million in restitution to the Davis family, representing Gregory's projected lifetime earnings. Prosecutors are already working to seize Gumruksu's remaining assets. The biotech company he co-founded has since collapsed. The HIV cure he claimed to have discovered never existed. The lavish lifestyle, those celebrity parties, the mansion in LA are all gone. A wrongful death lawsuit filed by Melissa Davis against Gumruksu remains pending as of 2026. In the end, Serhat Gumruksu's greed bought him nothing. The merger he killed to protect, well, the company eventually fell apart. The $100 million in stock became seized or worthless, and his lifestyle and the freedom to party with celebrities is gone forever. Gregory Davis demanded accountability from a con artist, and for that he was murdered in the snow on a January night in Vermont, leaving behind a pregnant wife and 6 children who needed their father. But Davis got his accountability in the end. The fake Marshal who kidnapped him got 16 years in prison. The middlemen who made it happen got 9 and 11 years, and the mastermind who paid for it all got life behind bars. It saddens me that 7 children will grow up without their father, but hopefully they can rest a little bit easier knowing that justice was served.